There are two types of destruction. The first is overt, dramatic, and rudimentary. It's what people anticipate when they're under attack. Anger, humiliation, pandemonium. The second is subtle, understated, and calculated. It's what people never see coming, and it's the one Machiavelli excelled at. Because true power doesn't shout. It whispers. It nods. It agrees right before it takes away your worth. If you truly want to destroy someone, don't argue with them. Don't expose them. Don't even threaten them. Just maintain a polite demeanor and watch as their world unravels piece by piece through your silent refusal to react. Machiavelli understood that the most effective revenge is never emotional. It's tactical. And it's carried out by those who have nothing left to prove. When you destroy someone politely, you're not just punishing them. You're stripping them of their control over your emotional response into someone driven by dominance, attention, or ego, that is more devastating than physical harm. So, how does it work? You're taking away their control over your emotions into someone who thrives on dominance, attention, or ego. That's even worse than violence. So, how does it work? It starts with one small change. You stop reacting to their chaos and start manipulating the environment they depend on. Because some people aren't just dangerous. They're dependent. Dependent on your anger, your forgiveness, your need to be seen, heard, or understood. And the moment you take that dependence away, they lose their grip on you. That's when you begin the real destruction with a calm demeanor, a polite tone, and just enough detachment to make them question if you ever cared at all. There's something cruel about indifference wrapped in manners. It makes people spiral because it forces them to confront the one truth they fear most. You're no longer emotionally invested. That smile you give them now, it's not warmth. It's a mask, a calculated signal that they've been moved from the center of your world to the margins of your strategy. And they will feel it long before you ever raise your voice. Machiavelli believed that every human interaction is a negotiation of power. And power, when wielded correctly, should always feel inevitable, never impulsive. This is why polite destruction works so well. Because it's clean, it's classy, and it's devastating. You don't destroy them by proving them wrong. Because it's clean, it's classy, and it's devastating. You don't destroy them by proving them wrong. You destroy them by proving they no longer matter. Imagine this. Someone insults you publicly. They expect a reaction, anger, embarrassment, defense. They want attention, but instead you smile. You agree. You calmly say, you might be right. And then you turn your attention to someone else. Someone they secretly envy. Someone who's now getting the validation they once craved. In one move, you've done three things. Refused to give them power, elevated someone else in their place, and maintained your social grace. That's not just a power move. That's warfare. And you've won without raising your voice. This is Machiavelli's genius. Use their expectations against them. They expect confrontation. Play to their expectations. They anticipate conflict, so offer cooperation. They expect resistance, so provide silence. They seek revenge, so give them kindness with a touch of distance. While they're busy trying to decipher your strategy, you're already several moves ahead. Here's another tactic Machiavelli would appreciate. Publicly agree with them, but privately undermine them. Smile during the meeting, show support for their idea, and make them feel safe. Then, subtly influence the people around them. Ask probing questions, plant doubts, and shift the focus without them noticing. By the time they realize what's happened, they'll be surrounded by people who still smile at them but no longer trust them. This isn't about drama, it's about subtly manipulating the situation to your advantage. People often misunderstand what happens when someone is destroyed. It's not about the person, but rather the pattern. You don't destroy someone because you're hurt, but because they pose a threat to your peace, power, or potential. And when that moment comes, you don't announce it. Instead, you withdraw, deflect, and become professionally polite. This denies them the emotional presence they crave most. It's not weakness, but rather self-control weaponized. It's grace used as armor. And it's how dangerous minds have eliminated enemies without ever raising a blade. When someone expects fire and you give them frost, you don't just confuse them, you paralyze them. When someone expects something and you give them the opposite, it's not just confusing. It's paralyzing. They start doubting every move you make. Was that smile genuine? Was that compliment sincere? Do they even see you anymore? That's psychological warfare. And Machiavelli would approve of it. If you want revenge, don't shout or threaten. Just withdraw emotionally. Be polite, but strategically so. And when they feel the weight of your silence, when they drown in your absence, when they beg for the chaos they once scoffed at, you'll know you've won. You've destroyed them, but in a beautiful way. And they never even saw the weapon. There's a strange silence that follows polite destruction. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of confusion. They look at you and think, why aren't they angry? This isn't the silence of tranquility, but the silence of bewilderment. When they look at you, they're thinking, why aren't you angry? Why aren't you fighting back? And that's the beauty of it. You've taken away their expectation of your emotional response. Now they're left with politeness and paranoia. Because the moment you stop reacting, you become unpredictable. And the unpredictable person always has the upper hand. Machiavelli believed that power should never be displayed openly. It should be felt subtly, like a gentle breeze. So when someone disrespects you, manipulates you, or tries to dominate you, your response isn't anger. It's detachment, not just of your emotions, but of their social context. And here's how you do it. You start by freezing them out socially. You don't isolate them. You simply stop providing warmth to their environment. That means you still greet them, but with cold formalities. You still speak, but always after they've spoken. You're not cold, but you're no longer warm. And people can feel this change deep down. You're not cold, but you're not warm anymore. People can feel this change deeply. It's like walking into a room that used to smell like home and now smells like nothing. You haven't attacked them, but you've subtly removed the emotional connection. They'll smile, but it won't reach your eyes, and that will scare them because now they don't know where they stand. Ambiguity is a powerful tool. Another tactic is mirrored deference. Give them exactly what they give you, but politely. If they ignore your ideas, you start deferring to theirs in public. Make them the face of decisions that go wrong. Give them the floor when the spotlight is harsh. Always with a smile, always with support. But the support feels too easy, too eager. They'll sense something is off, but won't be able to pinpoint it because you've matched their energy and added a twist of strategy. Then use empty praise with precise language. Praise them often, but vaguely. Tell them, your leadership style is unique. You handled that situation very interestingly. You're always so confident. Your leadership style is quite distinctive. You always exude such confidence, which is truly inspiring. To those around you, you appear gracious, but there's a hint of ambiguity beneath the surface. While you may appear flawless in your work, it's important to remember that perfection is not always the goal. Instead, aim for quiet excellence and maintain an air of invincibility. This contrast between your gentle praise and your silent superiority can be unsettling for others, as they may sense that you no longer need their approval. They pick up on this in your tone, your timing, and your stillness, and it feels like a form of Machiavellian warfare. You're not fighting for victory, but rather creating a reality where you've already won, and others can't quite figure out how it happened. The key to this approach is to use politeness as a mask for cruelty. While others may expect kindness to be emotional, when your kindness is mechanical, precise, and detached, it can be truly terrifying. People can't help but wonder, are they being polite or are they planning something? And you never reveal your true intentions. They wonder, are they being polite or planning something? But you never respond to that question. You just keep showing up, smiling, quiet, polished, and unapproachable. Let's dive deeper. Machiavelli would remind you, the person who keeps their emotions hidden holds the power. Most people reveal their vulnerabilities. They overshare, rant, and show their insecurities. But you say less. You speak slower. You always give the impression of having something big to say, but never do. And that uncertainty, that's what breaks them. Not with fear, but with doubt. Here's what polite destruction looks like. They make a sarcastic comment. You laugh softly and say, "That's an interesting perspective. I admire your confidence." Then change the subject or ask them to elaborate in front of others. Let them ramble. If you want to end a relationship without confronting the other person directly, you can try changing the subject or asking them to elaborate in front of others. This allows them to ramble and overexpose themselves while you remain calm and relaxed. You're not attacking them, but rather giving them space to destroy themselves politely. Everyone can feel the shift, even if no one can explain it. This is known as surgical or Machiavellian tactics. The final tactic is to exit without closure. This is the kill shot after all the polite distance, calm maneuvering, and graceful repositioning. You leave without making a dramatic scene, but simply stop showing up in their orbit. There are no last words, no cold stare, no grand ending, just a perfectly timed silence that follows a season of flawless distant grace. The moment they realize you're no longer accessible, that you've emotionally exited without warning, the entire structure collapses because what they thought was tension was actually dependence. Now that you're gone, they're left questioning who they are without your reactions to define them. Machiavelli didn't want power that had to announce itself. He wanted power that people felt even when he wasn't in the room. That's what polite destruction is. He yearned for a level of influence that persisted even when he wasn't physically present. This is what we call polite destruction. It's not about personal glory or proving someone wrong. It's about creating a world where your adversary is erased and you're celebrated for how seamlessly you brought about their demise. You didn't shout, you didn't fight, you didn't rage. You smiled, you waited, you executed. And by the time they realized what had happened, you were already gone. Now you understand that the art of polite destruction isn't about causing harm. It's about manipulating people's perceptions so that they destroy themselves in your presence while you remain unscathed. Machiavelli would argue that true power lies in the ability to shape reality, not just actions. So when you destroy someone politely, you're not just managing your own image, you're distorting theirs. And that distortion lingers because even after you're gone, their reputation will continue to suffer. Their confidence will waver. Their authority will crumble silently from within. And no one will be able to trace it back to you because you didn't confront them directly. Their authority slowly decays from the inside out, and no one can trace it back to you because you didn't attack. Instead, you let the truth come to light. Now let's move on to the next layer. This time, we'll turn their strengths into weaknesses without confronting them directly. This is the ultimate form of polite destruction. We'll use their ego as our weapon. We'll let them expose themselves by doing exactly what they think they're best at. A powerful tactic is to praise them in public, especially when they're confident. This is the reversal they never expect. Instead of disagreeing with your rival, we'll compliment them, but in the wrong context. For example, we'll tell the aggressive person they're wonderfully assertive during a discussion about diplomacy. We'll compliment the impulsive person on their bold decisiveness right after a poor decision. We'll applaud the arrogant one for their fearless honesty in front of people who secretly resent them. Every word we say feels like support, but it's actually a spotlight, a magnifying glass, and under it they sweat. We're not just being polite, we're being surgical. Because what we're doing is this. We're weaponizing sincerity. And the more sincerely we smile, the more suspicious they become. You're using sincerity as a weapon. The more sincerely you smile, the more suspicious they become. Eventually, they won't trust your praise or your silence. They won't trust your presence. They'll unravel not from what you've done, but from what they think you might be doing. That's the beauty of this strategy. Machiavelli said that people judge more by appearance than by reality. In other words, perception is more powerful than action. So when you undermine someone politely, you're not tearing down their status directly. You're leading the audience to do it for you. And how do you do that? You use questions. Next, you use Socratic sabotage. Ask questions you already know the answer to, but ask them in public. For example, what was your reasoning behind that move? I'd love to understand your thinking, or that idea you mentioned. Could you walk us through the steps again? Or, I noticed the outcome didn't match the goal. Could you please walk us through the steps again? I noticed that the outcome didn't align with the goal. Was that deliberate? These are not criticisms. They're invitations. Invitations for the other person to share openly and reveal their lack of depth. You don't confront. You inquire. You let the weight of their incompetence fall while you sit back and listen respectfully, quietly, almost admiringly. That's psychological demolition. And you did it with just 3 words and a calm expression. But here's the catch. You don't wait around for applause. You don't linger for validation. You exit with grace mid-conversation if necessary. You nod. You thank them. You leave. Because the hallmark of true power is not needing to stay and watch the collapse they orchestrated. You leave because true power lies in not needing to stay and watch the destruction you caused. You already know the outcome, you planned for it. Let's delve deeper. What do you do when your enemy tries to make amends? If they sense they're losing you, they may try to win you back. You accept their apology, smile, and act grateful. But you never go back to the intimacy you once shared. You respond slowly, without initiating. You become the polite version of a stranger. That's the coldest kindness because it confirms their worst fear. They were forgiven but never regained access. And that's not punishment. It's a lesson. Machiavelli wouldn't shout at the betrayer. Machiavelli wouldn't react angrily to a traitor. Instead, he would subtly undermine them and promote them to a lower position. In public, he would welcome them warmly, but in private, he would let them wither away. Exile doesn't always have to be physical. Sometimes, the most effective form of exile is emotional. You didn't shout, you didn't expose, you didn't threaten. You maintained a facade and let it drive the other person mad. This is how power becomes a legacy. Not just a moment of revenge, but a reputation. A reputation that says you don't react, you remove. You don't attack, you disappear. You don't speak, but everyone listens. And finally, the most important principle, when the destruction is complete, say nothing. Let them talk. Let them spin. Let them beg, accuse, or fall silent. But you move on quietly, elegantly, without any need to explain yourself, because polite destruction only works if the silence is maintained after the storm. Machiavelli understood that true dominance comes not from how you punish others, but from how you control them. You move away quietly and calmly, without the need to explain yourself. This is the essence of polite destruction, maintaining the silence after the storm. Machiavelli understood that true dominance lies not in how you punish others but in how little you need to. They've felt it now, the shift, the silence, the lack of warmth in your smile. They don't know what changed, only that the room feels colder when you enter and hollow when you leave. This isn't punishment, it's precision. If you've done everything right, you've not just removed yourself emotionally, but altered how others perceive you. You've rewritten the power dynamics without a confrontation. Now they're trying damage control. Alone, confused, suspicious of everyone, especially themselves. That's not just destruction, that's a psychological masterpiece. The genius of March was in knowing how to make others question their understanding. Once doubt creeps in, control follows. He had a knack for making others question their beliefs. And once doubt creeps in, power follows. The best way to manipulate someone is to let them reveal their own insecurities while you remain calm and composed. They start talking behind your back. You don't respond. They make fun of you. You flatter them. They attack you. You thank them. You don't engage in their level of energy. You counter it with poise. You become a reflection they can't break, no matter how hard they try. And here's what happens next. Machiavelli knew it well. They start to self-sabotage. You don't need to isolate them. They isolate themselves. They become paranoid, trying to decode your silence. They lose focus, making mistakes just to prove they're still in control. They become visibly shaken and others start taking notice. When you withdraw your emotional engagement, people become unstable and make mistakes to prove they're still in control. They become visibly uncomfortable and others start noticing. All because you removed the one thing that kept them grounded, your emotional involvement. People often don't realize how dependent they are on your presence until it's no longer there. Not warm, not angry, not reactive, just neutral. That neutrality is toxic to insecure people because it forces them to confront their deepest fears. They no longer matter. They are no longer a threat. You are no longer playing their game. Now we move into the final phase. Erasure. Polite destruction. It doesn't end with humiliation. It ends with invisibility. You stop mentioning them. You stop watching them. You stop referring to their name in any context that once highlighted their significance. You don't celebrate their downfall. You act like it never happened, like they never existed. That is the final act of power, to erase someone without anger. You act as if it never happened, as if they never existed. That is the ultimate act of power, to erase someone without any emotion. Because emotion gives them a legacy. Silence buries them. And when they try to bring you back into the conversation, when they try to provoke you into reacting, you remain calm. You remain detached. You respond with a phrase that instantly crushes their ego. "Oh, I haven't thought about them in ages." That line doesn't just sting. It shatters whatever hope they were clinging to. They were preparing for a battle. You forgot there was even a war. Machiavelli would remind you that the purpose of polite destruction is not revenge, it's reputation. Because when others see that you can destroy someone quietly, without any fuss, without any retaliation, without even raising your voice, they start to fear your silence more than they fear most people's anger. That's the level you reach where people hesitate to cross you. Not because you're loud, but because they know you'll never give them another chance. You become untouchable, unbothered, unbeatable. Let's be brutally clear about this. Most people destroy themselves trying to destroy others. They lash out. The majority of individuals destroy themselves in their attempts to destroy others. They lash out, argue, and expose their wounds in the name of justice. However, the student of Machiavelli, you never stoop. You rise not out of arrogance but out of calculation, because emotions are for amateurs, and you are building an empire, not an ego trip. Your power lies not in how you punish but in how little you require revenge. You've already won. You knew at the moment you stopped needing them to understand your silence. Now, they'll keep trying to draw you back, not always with attacks, but with compliments, apologies, and tears. However, none of it matters because you're no longer playing the same game. You're not trying to win. You're proving you've moved beyond. Your kindness was the rope, your poise was the blade, and now your absence is the grave. Your composure was your weapon. Now, your absence is your tomb. Tupac's true message wasn't about war or politics. It was about understanding the vulnerability of those who seek power and never anticipate losing it peacefully. When you grasp this, you no longer need to fight. Your foes self-destruct in the silence you leave behind. You don't just destroy reputations. You haunt them, not because you're cruel, but because you were kind until they misunderstood your compassion for invincibility. So, here's your final move. Say nothing, show nothing, lose nothing, and let the echo of your absence be the loudest thing they ever hear. That is Machiavellian destruction. Elegant, strategic, enduring.